everyone. That was a generous introduction. Thank you, everybody, to be here. I've been watching the whole morning, pretty excited. Very nice to see such a motivated crowd, and I'm very nervous to present. Okay, without delay, I didn't put this whole presentation as, I don't have a proper outline to it, but I thought it'll be nice to tell you as a story where we started, where we came from, and where we are at the moment. With sector support, with a strong sector support that is from the Forestry, and using the collaborative approach, we have an industry membership of 180 people, and we are an innovation hub who works on looking into solutions to ease out the operations in the forestry sector, to help the industry improve their productivity. And this research is across the entire chain of the entire value chain, and we are about 400 scientists who are working in 4 different sectors, which are divided based on the challenges that the forestry has. And as an example, forest operations is one of the big focus areas. The challenges that we have at the moment, which are spelled out by the industry itself, is the fiber cost and people and safety, fiber supply, and so on. Also into a futuristic example of Forestry 4.0. In all these challenges, we have UAV as an application that is trying to improve or reduce some of the efforts, either like the speakers in the morning were trying to tell, either supplement, complement, or improve the strategies in the sector. We all know that with the information age, we have learned a lot, and it gave us a lot to us in how to gather the data, how to improve our mapping, and how to update it over time. So we have had excellent satellites and aerial sector that gave us an updates up to every 5 to 10 years, which are very useful for the forestry sector to manage in terms of strategic and tactical planning. What it left behind, or left a big hole, was in the operational sector, where we have changes that happen pretty quickly, and we don't have sufficient data set that supports it. And you need, constant or, on the job kind of decision making that needs to be taken care of. So, and in the operational sector, there are challenges. The data needs are not simply the same, like people have been presenting. Sometimes you just need visual assessment. You don't need a lot of data, but a little bit ahead, you want to have area-based assessments. Like, for example, one example was given in the afternoon about the cut block. Or you want to go in much more detailed analysis in terms of getting the height, inventory, and so on. So the challenge is quite heterogeneous. And it's not just that. Even the blocks where you have to acquire the data is pretty challenging. That means they could be dispersed. It's not very cost effective to go and gather data at once. There are varying conditions, so you would not able to standardize it. And you might want to have not just sampling, but you want to have more census feeling about it. And there is a lot of issue in terms of inaccessibility and safety as well. So these are the constraints that are in the background with the operational sector. With this in the context, now what we are seeing in the past less than a decade, I wouldn't say, but I was thinking, I came into UAVs something like 7 years ago, but we have seen example with the with Tesla. Mr. Tesla was who built a radio-controlled boat. That was a start of, I believe, the autonomous navigation part. And thanks to the military, who is able to, push a lot of research in many sectors in terms of machine vision, in terms of autonomous vehicles, in terms of communication. Thanks to them, they brought the drone technology gave a new degree of freedom to the commercial sector. Now we are seeing drones in a lot of shapes and sizes. And over time, I was very curious to see how did the popularity change since I've heard about drones. So in the top graph that you see here, based on Google Trends, just people are searching about it. Between 2004 to 2016, there's a sudden surge. There's a lot of interest. But what happened in the last few years, 2016 to 2019, it kind of stabilized. The people are much more aware of it now. And what is happening is there's also a change from what we were listening to, kind of paparazzi stuff, to today we are talking about HAPS, the pseudo-satellites, or using UAVs, with solar-powered UAVs that can go and do some monitoring over the Arctic. You are talking about multiple drones put together. It's the alpha link connections to be able to be a pseudo-satellite for communication. So we've come far from just being doing fun things to very serious stuff. What's happening in the technology hype? But since 2014, I'm seeing it still is very important part of the technology sector. In the hype graph, you can still see that it's taking the peak of expectations. So it still remains there. But what is it in the forestry sector in terms of applications? Are we really at the trough of disillusionment? Have we come to a state of enlightenment? Are we picking it up, or have you stabilized? So these are the questions probably you people will be answering at the end of the talk. Coming back to the drones, there are tons of pretty pictures that the drones give. They have given us what we call it as unrestricted viewing. So you've got a lot of autonomy in picking up the images at the scales that you want, at the resolutions that you want. Pretty inexpensive. We've been talking about drones that are possible to put together at $200 with a neat camera and simple logistics. So deployment is very easy, quick turnaround. We have heard a lot of pros that were there in the morning by a lot of speakers out here. It comes with, thanks to the machine vision and the improvement in photogrammetric procedures, we have a beautiful visualization and getting a very realistic 3D images from these data. With that, so should we say these pretty pictures are just pretty pictures, tons of them that are coming together, or can we make use of it for our forest operations sector? That's how this UAV program at FPInnovations took birth in 2013. So we put this proposal together to the industry members to see how interested they are. They have come forward to give us some directions saying that let's see if this platform is the niche platform for forest operations. If so, what are the accuracies? What should be the rate of investment? Could we come out with some best practices? Any new applications besides just having, having to do the data gathering or surveillance? And of course, partnership that goes with the FBI. Initial challenges, I don't want to go over the list. I'm trying to build the story as an evolution that we did since 2013 onwards. So at that time, now it is, it's no-brainer that you would want to use a VTOL that is vertically taking off when it's the question of using it within the forestry sector. In small openings, you don't have much place, and you want to have a much control over your system, so you are using more VTOLs. That's what we did. And we worked through the entire process of how to define the best management practices. So with our member consultations, we've come up with what should be the validation trials that we go through. And we did a report on the US Tech Watch. Of course, that's obsolete at the moment, but at that time, 2014, that was pretty new, in collaboration with the CGQ, which is one of the drone technology experts that are working in Quebec. And we defined what should be the research platform and what are the sensors that go with it. Of course, we also have learned how do we have to plan these drone experiments or the trials. Come up with, in those years, we had to go for a SFOC for every project that, or every trial that we were doing. We also came up with what should be the ground setup that should accompany our aerial sector. Of course, in those years, the acquisition was one thing. We didn't know what were the right parameters that we need to use for a particular trial. So that was also done. We set up the standards, what are the accuracies that should go with each of these acquisitions, the results, and value proposition. This gives you an idea of what we did when we started off. In fact, what I forgot to mention is this project was initiated in Alberta. So the members in Alberta were super excited. They were the ones that pushed this forward. So great thanks to them that where we initiated, I'm glad to come back and present what we initiated in Alberta. So the validation trials were picked up that covered various examples along the entire value chain of the forest operations. So I'll go through some of the examples. From here, what I did was I put the presentation and examples in such a way where we have simple applications of just surveillance to a more complex one and automated workflows and how we are integrating it into autonomous navigation. So now it is, again, a no-brainer. This kind of workflows were also set up everywhere. More softwares have come up that can support you with all the workflows which are automated already. And in this exercise, we also understood what should be the data load that will come up in certain applications, how much of system time that is required for different applications once again, how many images you have, and what should be the process. So there are 3 products that are very standard. You could have just an orthomosaic, or you would also have a 2D, 3D model. You want to generate a surface model. So depending on that, we have built what is the requirement that should be there. And positional accuracies and vertical accuracies, obviously you want to supplement or you want to replace the current technology which is there in the other platforms. For example, aerial sector, we have been talking a lot about should we replace a LiDAR for at least operational reasons. So if so, what should be the accuracies? So we've done a bunch of experiments in different conditions, in regular and irregular surfaces, having a partial canopy, having a complete canopy, and so on. We've come up with algorithms how to improve the DEMs as well, because we need to remove the noise from the surface that is there. So we saw that, and in different altitudes. I'm sorry, I think the text is very small out here. They are pretty accurate. It's no-brainer to say, once again, you go higher the elevation, altitude, your capture of the data, your accuracies are going to be slightly lower. So we had about 10 centimeters of accuracy at 60 meters high. That's the kind of information we were generating. So along with that, remote sensing is always dependent on georeferencing. Ground setup is very important. So ground validation, so how many targets and what kind of targets, how do you place them, was also one question that we dealt with. These are all going into the best management practices, once again, in different conditions of the terrain, different conditions of the stand, and elevational sector. So in all this, we saw that there's a stabilization of using at least 5 targets that are needed to get the best accuracies for the applications where you need 3 dimensions or height of the vegetation. So we did a comparison as well with to see how the structure is comparing itself when you see aerial LiDAR. This is how somewhat probably in large number of cases, at least in the software sector, we saw that the structure was pretty much similar to what you would get from the aerial LiDAR, so it could work as a replacement in most of the cases. So we've used this information to extract single stems, and this was across different heights, starting from 40 centimeter of the seedling to almost like 40 meters of the tree. So we could use the images to automatically extract the trees and get their single stem heights. And these have been, once again, validated on ground pretty well when it comes to, as I think Greg was mentioning, it's pretty much the same. If the error that you have, the bias that you have because of acquisition from the top, that is, you're looking into the depth information, you have some kind of underestimation when you have seedlings. So this underestimation somehow vanishes once you come to about 6 meters height of the canopy. So if you have vegetation which is below 6 meters, you have a way to correct that. Otherwise, you need just about 4 targets, just georeference them, fly the data, get the 3D model, extract your trees, you're pretty good. As the time was changing, technology is improving, so did we. We added a lot of equipment to our existing one. So we have simple DJI Inspire, which could be used for surveillances, to more controlled, like a Sky Ranger, which is pretty neat, more accurate, and with its own good flight mission softwares, to the systems that are like carrying multiple payloads or heavier payloads, going up to Renegade, where you can pick up a LiDAR. On the sensor side, we have used all kinds of simple RGB, off-the-shelf, consumer-grade, to FLIR cameras, which are thermal cameras, to understand multispectral. We've done hyperspectral as well as the LiDAR. So I'll start with some examples which are pretty simple. Once again, off-the-shelf, consumer-grade cameras, just for surveillance, health, and safety. Here's an example to see. We fly the area, or you can use videography to pick up potential hazards before you go into harvesting. This is to support falling odets. So this was very simple, very easy. We were able to identify pretty much all the potential hazards that are there in the area. Morning, I heard you questioning about using a thermal sensor for hotspot detection. Yes, we have experimented putting a small, less than 300 square centimeters hotspot in various conditions, that is exposed areas, in partial canopy to under complete full canopy, and to see whether we are able to identify this hotspot or not in different angles, different altitudes, and so on. So almost up to 200 meters. I hope there's no Transport Canada person. Yes, I did have to take the aircraft to about 200 meters high to see whether I'm able to detect it or not. We were able to do it in pretty much all conditions. So we extended this to identify roadside pile burns. So it was pretty good. In fact, we did it in Whitecourt, this experiment, in parallel to the survey that they were already doing. It was well validated, and this technology could be used for picking up roadside pile burns. Resource road steep switchback experiments. We have used this to understand whether we could identify or see these steep switchbacks, especially for steep slopes in BC, something like 25 to 30%, to help the help plan for the engineers to do the proper decisions that they could do it from the images that were there and the 3D model that was built out of it. So the models that come out of it are pretty accurate for them to do engineering stuff. Once again, if not automated identification of species, could we replace manual assessment? So on the leftmost corner here is the color stereogram given by the BC Ministry. So they wanted to know if they are able to pick up on the screen these species. So we showed that pretty much all of them could be identified. I'm sorry, I didn't see that, it's only 5 minutes. So this is also possible. I wouldn't go a lot into milliards. There was also an example already shown, so I'll skip this slide. Which is more interesting is that we've used DEM for surface drainage design. The contour that comes out of it is pretty good to design the drainage plan. For automated workflows, here's an example. We have collected training data across Canada on regeneration to build an automated tool, which is all put together with the Python in the front end, where we are able to generate census of the stocking map of the regeneration across the any block, and give identify areas that are understocked, areas that are well spaced, and free growing trees as well. These inputs are helpful in generating the typical reports that are produced for the ministry. This is an example that you can see in Alberta for a very young regeneration stand, and this is an example that you could see for the FDG declaration. So it's possible to automate the workflows and give this kind of information for compliance. So this is well validated. In fact, we have released this software beta version to the interested members, and there have been installations, we got feedback, and now we are planning to go on a bigger implementation mode across the province in BC. Similar to that, we have also automated log identification for merchantable waste identification and reporting. This also is well validated and matches what happens on the ground, so it has a potential to replace ground surveys. And this information could be used potentially to identify biomass recovery zones for secondary uses. Moving forward, much more complex examples. We've used this information in one example already. I think in the morning the speakers told about the stress and mortality. We've extended this work to for early intervention strategies of spruce bedworm, looking at the images that are stands that are varyingly affected. So can we identify those that are healthy against moderately to severely affected and identify the dead trees? This would be very useful, not just for EI strategies, but for salvaging some of the wood. Here's an example that I can say, even at the tree level, we are able to separate trees that are affected in the current year versus the cumulative effect that was there previously on simple RGB images. So this information, wow. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I have to skip. I didn't realize I was going very slow. So let's skip to that part, go into standing with quality into a much bigger sensors like LiDAR. With rich information, you're able to penetrate into the ground, also look into the understory vegetation. This we have used to determine the wood quality characteristics, like bringing in the crown base height or canopy diameter, and in fact also the branchiness. So we were able to estimate the number of branches along the stem. So if you have this information, idea is that once you fly a LiDAR, we should be able to tell what is the value of the standing timber. This is all from the UAV-based LiDAR. We also used it for multi-temporal treatment effects. And the best part is this information is not just for looking into top of the ground. We are also able to get a surface characterization to pick up what are the hazards in navigating. This all information, like if you identify a hazard, you will be able to tell if your vehicle in the forest is drivable or not. This information is going into a bigger or autonomous harvesting system program. So it should be able to do some checking, and I'm sorry, I would have loved to give you some costing assessment, but I'm running out of time. There's a good potential in bringing the project cost to about $2 per hectare. I'm talking about not just simple surveys, with all the workflows that have come up, including the processing costs would be brought down. There are lots of technology out there that eases out our challenges. At the moment, we have hybrid UAVs, you've got charging stations that can take you to continuously fly, better payloads, and so on. But still, we feel it is definitely a bigger niche you should be able to answer, whether we are there at the plateau of productivity or not. There's still challenges remaining. There's a significant learning curve, like we have heard in the afternoon from the speakers, that a forest service should have. Regulatory constraints are there. Low-cost UAVs are there, but there's issues with flight mission softwares that don't exist, that come with it. And there's weather conditions, like Greg already mentioned. We don't have survey-grade cameras with us, so we can do a better job. And there's an issue with standardization as well. Thank you. I'm sorry I had to rush through the talk.